Welcome to Saints and Feasts of the Catholic Calendar, meeting the greatest men and women who have ever lived. October 6th, Saint Bruno, priest, 1030 to 1101. Patron saint of Calabria, Italy, and of Germany. Solitary confinement is not a punishment when it is voluntary and shared with God. Today's saint was born in an unknown year. He left his native Cologne to study in Reims, France as a young man, and was ordained a priest around 1055. Aware of Bruno's obvious talents, the Bishop of Reims demanded that the young priest remain in his diocese, where Bruno became the head of Reims' most illustrious school for almost 2 decades, and then chancellor of the diocese. Bruno's trajectory was, at this point in his life, typical of talented, educated, and well-connected priests of his era. He was destined to become a good, scholarly, and politically aware medieval bishop, the kind whose graves fill the floors and stuff the side chapels of many Gothic cathedrals. But a bad bishop altered the arc of Bruno's trajectory. Bruno's bishop patron died and was succeeded by a corrupt aristocrat who had bought his office. This ecclesiastic had little concern for the church except as a well of money and power from which he could freely drink. Revolt, sharp tensions, recriminations, and violence ensued. Everyone was damaged. Bruno withdrew from the scene, partly to avoid being named a bishop himself, and partly to reevaluate what prize he was truly seeking in life. Bruno and some companions then sought out a well-known hermit in southern France who, a few years later, would go on to found the monastery of Cîteaux, the mother foundation of the Cistercian order. Cîteaux was the very same monastery which had such an influence on Bruno's contemporary, Saint Bernard of Clairvaux. But Bruno was not meant to be a Cistercian. Still searching, Bruno and 6 companions approached the Bishop of Grenoble, France, who was favorable to their plan and granted them a remote location in the French Alps called Chartreuse. It was at 1085. St. Bruno's successors reside at the Grand Chartreuse to this day, living the part hermit, part community of prayer, part work, part study, all poor and all silent existence of Carthusian monks that Bruno envisioned. Though Bruno founded the Grand Chartreuse, he did not remain there for long. A former pupil of Bruno's had become pope, and he needed Bruno's hand on the rudder to help him navigate the ship of the church in the rough seas of medieval ecclesiastical politics. So Bruno moved to Rome and lived in a cell amidst the crumbled arches and half walls of the baths of Diocletian. His every intention of returning to the Grand Chartreuse was frustrated. The Pope compelled Bruno to remain in Italy in case his services were needed, even as the Pope and his court were on the run from determined enemies. Resigned to his exile and refusing an appointment as bishop in southern Italy, in about 1094, Bruno and some followers spawned a mini Chartreuse in Calabria, Italy, called La Torre, although this second foundation was later to be absorbed into the Cistercian order. Bruno died there, living in silence as a monk. He was never formally canonized and left no rule for his order, leaving that task to a successor. St. Bruno had a burning love for the Holy Eucharist and for the Virgin Mary. Silence was also his muse. God speaks beautifully through his creation, but one must hear God's silence to understand him. Silence is a powerful form of speech, a negative word which God, as the father of a large family, often uses to communicate. The internal word is not less of a word because it remains unspoken. A word is an internal mental tool for organizing thought before it is a means of communication. God's own internal word was so powerful that it became flesh and blood, a living word, more powerful than mere spoken language. Words are a form of action, but they can also limit meaning. God speaks most deeply in the action of creation, through his Son and in silence. As lovers know, a glance, a touch, a smile, a thought is sufficient. Words may add to these things, but they can also subtract from them. It has been said that even if a marble statue of St. Bruno could stretch open its mouth, he would still keep his vow and remain silent. For when words are many, transgression is not lacking. St. Bruno, your life of generous and active service to the Church was curtailed, and you chose the better portion, seeking God in silence, poverty, study, and prayer. Help all who are in the world to emulate your quiet dedication, focus, and endurance. Amen.